It's finally kicking in. While dining at my in-laws, I collapsed. Instead of showing concern, my husband and Mill smirked at me. At that moment, I realized they drugged me. But by the time I caught on, it was too late. I lost consciousness. Also, I fought. When I came to, surprisingly, both my husband and Mill were also unconscious. My name is Catherine, a housewife in my 30s. My husband, Bob, is also in his 30s and works for the government. We've been married for a few years, but it's hard to say our marital life has been smooth sailing. Both my in-laws are highly educated, and Bob graduated from a prestigious university. Having a high-achieving husband like Bob, you'd think I'd be content. But my Mill always expects more from me, often saying, "Since you married Bob, you should at least do this for us." Both Mill and Bob often belittle my education, making snide remarks like, "Sorry, Catherine, this might be over your head since you didn't go to a fancy college, or this is why it's hard with less educated folks." I've often felt looked down upon. I never really wanted to visit the in-laws, but our current house was bought with their financial support, so we can't cut ties. People might suggest I should leave him, but outside his family home, my husband is incredibly reserved. It might even be fair to say that his Mill exacerbates his behavior. At home, he's gentle, and when it comes to housework, he says, "Let me help out," and he actively pitches in. His behavior at his family's is so drastically different, I sometimes wonder if he has a split personality. At home, my husband is very considerate, kind, and without fault. We only visit his parents' house once a month for a dinner gathering. I've convinced myself that his change in demeanor is solely due to his nasty Mill, and that he's otherwise calm at home. Plus, during the holiday season, he becomes incredibly busy. Being a government worker, he shouldn't have any overtime, but during this period, he has more social events, resulting in more time away from home. It happens every year, so I didn't pay much attention. But after the new year, I noticed he's been coming home late more frequently, especially on Fridays. He's always late. When I asked my husband about it, he said, "Everyone's getting older, so unless the next day is a day off, it's hard to invite them out for drinks." I get that it's easier to let loose when you don't have work the next day. But having a drinking gathering every Friday seems odd, doesn't it? I began to suspect something was up with my husband's behavior, and the mystery was soon unveiled. On a Friday night, I happened to be returning from a friend's house and was passing by his parents' place when I spotted him. His family's home is quite a distance from his workplace, located in a quiet residential neighborhood where there aren't any bars. Why would my husband be here at this time? Curious, I decided to follow him, and, as expected, he entered his parents' house. After waiting for a while and seeing no sign of him leaving, I hesitantly contacted his Mill. She cheerfully replied, "Actually, recently he's been really into drinking. Once we have a grandchild, he probably won't have many chances to drink, right? That's why he's been sneaking over here for drinks every week." It's true that the Mill loves her alcohol, and every time we have a meal there, she always opens a bottle with my husband. I never really saw my Phil as much of a drinker, but maybe he started due to my Mill's influence. "Why not just tell me that?" I mumbled. "Well, he probably feels embarrassed. Maybe it's about saving face. Saying he's drinking with coworkers sounds cooler than admitting he's drinking with his parents, right? Is that really it? I wondered, but didn't want to intrude on their family time. Since my Mill seemed in a good mood, I just ended the call. Now, the only family I have left is my younger brother, Jake. My father passed away in an accident, and my mother due to an illness. Just as I became an adult and was about to repay their kindness, this happened. Jake inherited 70% of the insurance money and inheritance, while I received the remaining 30%. Considering my brother, Jake, was in college at the time, he received the larger portion of the inheritance. I have no regrets about it. I only told my husband that I had inherited a bit and planned to use this money when our child is born. Since he knew I had a small inheritance and that I didn't have my parents anymore, his compassionate dad started hosting monthly dinners for us. I've never known the joy of drinking with my parents, but it hurt that my husband had kept it a secret. When he came home that night and I asked about him visiting his parents, he said, "Oh, so you found out," and just headed for a bath. It seemed like it was just about keeping up appearances, and his Friday nights were merely him fulfilling his filial duties. So, my suspicions about him should have been cleared. Also, I thought. However, when he passed by me, there was a faint, sweet scent different from alcohol. I was taken aback by the hint of perfume, but the strong smell of alcohol quickly overshadowed it. I couldn't help but feel uneasy, wondering if it was just my imagination. My Mill does wear perfume occasionally, so perhaps it was from her. While I kept feeling uneasy, thinking it might be just my imagination, my Mill occasionally wears perfume, so maybe that was it. I tried to dismiss the thought. After all, I knew from my Mill stories that my husband visited their home, and I even saw him enter their place myself. So, there's no way he's meeting another woman. That was my conclusion until a week later. We had a dinner at my in-laws, but only my Mill was home as the Phil was on a business trip. Honestly, it was a bit off-putting, but my Mill was all smiles that day, saying, "A neighbor baked a cake. Let's have some. Jessica," and even brought out a chocolate cake after dinner. Normally, she'd say something like, "Eating sweets at night is unhealthy for a woman." Oh, but Jessica, you probably don't know that, do you? Ha ha, my bad. But today, her constant cheeriness felt unsettling. Maybe she'd had some drinks, but it felt eerie how even my husband didn't comment on her behavior. However, these dinners usually consist of just my husband and Mill chatting. Usually, I just eat quietly, and it's peaceful as long as there aren't any snide comments. Yet, today both my Mill and husband kept asking, "This turned out really delicious today, don't you think?" But honestly, it tasted awful. I can't pinpoint what went wrong, but it's simply not good. It's not just about bad ingredients or weird seasoning. It's hardly edible. Yet, with both my husband and Mill smiling and asking for feedback, I couldn't bring myself to say it tasted bad. I had to drink water after every bite. So, I was really looking forward to the chocolate cake for dessert. Finally, something to cleanse my palate. Also, I thought, but my taste buds were already off, and even the cake tasted odd. By the end, even water started tasting bad, and I felt miserable. Just then, my phone rang. Checking it, I saw it was from my younger brother, Jason. Surprisingly, my Mill said, "Oh, feel free to take that," which was unusual for her. Jason is a single nurse. Currently, given his busy schedule, he rarely calls, so I wondered what was up. Stepping into the hallway, I answered, "Hey, Jason. Remember how brother-in-law loved his drinks? Someone from my work gave me a fancy bottle, but I don't drink. Mind if I pass it on to him? Got it. I'm actually at my in-laws right now. Maybe he can drop it off here. My husband and father-in-law have a drink together every week, so I thought it'd be a nice gesture to gift them something." With that in mind, I asked my brother, Alex, to bring the drink over and return to the dining table. I anticipated their surprise as I tried to re-engage in the meal, but found it hard. Instead, I slowly sipped my drink, just nodding along to the conversation. A few hours went by. Usually, our dinners wrap up by now, but today, both my husband and Mill seemed deeply engrossed in their conversation. Drinks flowing more than usual. Perhaps it was my exhaustion, but I slowly began to feel lightheaded. Feeling overwhelmingly sluggish and sensing that something wasn't right, I tried to stand up, but my legs wobbled and I collapsed. To my astonishment, instead of being concerned, both my husband and Mill looked down at me, laughing, almost as if they were delighted. Finally kicked in, seeing those two mockingly smile, I realized at that moment something had been done to me by them. But I couldn't maintain consciousness and passed out. How much time had passed? "Sis. Wake up, sis." I was shaken awake, and upon opening my eyes, my brother was there. And it was already day outside. Why is my brother here? I couldn't think further. My head was heavy, it was painful, and I was just sleepy. My brother said, "I've called an ambulance. It's going to be okay." He tried to reassure me, but I didn't understand the situation. Suddenly, I glanced behind my brother. My husband and Mill were collapsed on the floor. They seemed to be knocked out drunk, but all I could comprehend was that both were unconscious. My brother kept insisting everything was fine, and I lost consciousness again. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital. I was on N4, clueless about what had happened, and felt a wave of anxiety. Then my brother came in and explained the situation to me. That night, after I had collapsed at my in-laws' house, my brother had arrived there. He came to deliver the alcohol, but he had something crucial to tell me. So he asked my Mill to let me out, but she said, "Oh, Karen already left." She didn't let him in, insisting I had gone. However, finding my husband's car and my shoes still there, he grew suspicious. Pretended to leave, but peeked through the window and saw me collapsed inside. In panic, he tried to call an ambulance, but my husband noticed him through the window and intervened. Stop. Karen just fell asleep after drinking. Can't believe she'd sleep in such a place. Ha ha ha. My husband said he was about to move me to the bed, but due to my Mill hiding my condition, my brother was suspicious. He managed to get inside the in-laws' house and put me to bed. But I wouldn't wake up easily, and when I did, I was still out of it. Seeing no signs of alcohol consumption and my unnatural sleep, my brother, a nurse, found it abnormal. He thought I might have been drugged during dinner. But carrying me out of there seemed difficult, and those two didn't give him a chance to call an ambulance. My husband said, "I'll watch over Karen. You should go home. You must be tired, aren't you, Chris?" Considering it dangerous to leave me alone, my brother invited them for a drink with the quality alcohol he brought. They were hesitant but bit the bait, seeing the high-quality alcohol. At that moment, he managed to bottle the water from my glass. It seems there was something in the water. They fell asleep immediately. I only put a little in, thinking it'd be bad to put it all. Once they were incapacitated, my brother called an ambulance. He preserved the half-eaten cake in a bag for evidence. Since then, I've been in the hospital. Subsequent tests revealed high levels of a sleeping pill in my system. Of course, I hadn't taken any such drug. Given the strange taste of the food, it wasn't surprising I might have been drugged. Their malicious actions were evident, and my husband and his associates' intentions were clear. I immediately reported to the police, and when they tested the cake my brother had saved, traces of a sleeping drug were found. Administering drugs to someone without their knowledge is an act of assault. I filed a report, and both my husband and my mill were arrested. The pair, still hungover from the heavy drinking the day before, failed to properly hide the evidence. Sure enough, all the food I'd eaten was found to contain the sleeping drug. They were taken into custody in a dazed state. Further investigations revealed they had intended to harm me. Shockingly, my husband had been having an affair, bringing another woman to his parents' home. This had been going on for the past 6 months, since every Friday his father would go camping with friends, leaving the house empty. That's why my husband felt free to have an affair so openly at his parents' house. The woman was a junior from his college years. She was smart, well-educated, and most importantly, a favorite of my mill. Moreover, my mill felt regret, saying, "I shouldn't have made him marry such an inept woman who was still single at 30. This bizarre guilt drove her to support my husband's affair. She even preferred him to be with the other woman and wanted to push us toward divorce. But she also feared the stigma of a divorce in society. It seems the two conspired to drug me with a massive dose of sleeping pills, planning to make it look like I took my own life. That way, I'd be out of the picture. My husband could marry his mistress, and he'd get his hands on an inheritance as well. And so, the two of them set their plan into motion. The sleeping pills were discovered to be the ones my husband had prescribed from a psychiatrist, claiming his demanding job kept him awake. Further, when my brother searched the house, he found a suicide note I supposedly wrote but had no memory of, bringing out evidence of their deception. This led to their rearrest for attempted murder. Of course, I planned to divorce, and when I consulted a lawyer, my mill was busy dealing with her own impending divorce from her husband, so no one was there to support mine. Yet, in a final act of defiance, my husband refused to pay any alimony. Desperate to sever ties with him, I grappled with whether I should even fight for the alimony. All I wanted was to never see him again. Concerned for me, my father-in-law offered to cover the alimony expenses himself. My father-in-law stated, I have my own negligence for not realizing sooner. I'll cover this as a way to make amends, but I'll ensure my son repays it." Grateful for his offer, I accepted it. I also demanded alimony from the mistress and successfully got it. I thought there would be disputes, but she was apparently engaged and didn't want to escalate the situation. However, her affair was eventually exposed, leading to their breakup. Well, she got what she deserved. Finally able to settle things, I divorced my husband and moved into an apartment. A month later, my brother mentioned he had someone he wanted to introduce me to. I wondered if this could be it. When I arrived at the designated coffee shop, my brother introduced his fiancée to me. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Honestly, the timing was bad, and I struggled with when to bring it up. Which is why I delayed the introduction, my brother, Bob, said, trying to be considerate. It seemed he had intended to talk once my relationship with my husband was finally over. Since half a year had already passed from that incident, I felt almost guilty for making him wait that long. The woman looked kind-hearted and pleasant. There was no reason for me to object. It turns out she's a co-worker of Bob's and also a nurse. Bob had been a great help through everything, and I genuinely wanted him to find happiness. Seeing the young couple so in love warmed my heart,